Today's guest is Emmaline Rasmussen. Emmaline is a registered dietitian and a wellness consultant, and she's here to give us a little insight into her world and talk to us about sexual health. Emmaline, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, great to have you.
Wonderful.
I feel like we have a lot of questions as two guys, who are pretty health conscious and into nutrition.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a stronger erection.
Okay,
100%.
great.
Yeah, I'm
all
sure
the
plenty
time.
of guys are. Yeah, I
just
want
to
it
walk around
24/7.
with one, like at all times.
Yeah,
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
We can work on that.
Thank you. Yeah. So welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Maybe we can start with like maybe a common just misconception or just something that people don't know about. Well, maybe what you do in general.
Yeah.
Because I know you also work with a lot of musicians, right?
Yes. So I'm a registered dietitian by training. I also do have a degree in integrative medicine. So that allows me to practice as a holistic nutritionist, more or less. One common misconception about nutrition is that not all... So the word nutritionist is basically a blanket term that can refer to pretty much anyone in that field. So you might not actually have qualifications to dispense nutrition advice. So nutritionist is sort of a loose, unregulated term versus dietitian does require a certain amount of education, internship, supervised practice, board exams, and then, of course, ongoing continuing education. You have to keep your hours up. You have to keep your licensure up in many states. So that's kind of a common misconception. Although I will say a lot of people out there who don't have nutrition certification still do have a whole wealth of knowledge, but specific to like different conditions and different chronic diseases and the management of them and even just kind of optimizing somebody's diet by really truly personalizing it to them. I think that generally speaking, a registered dietitian tends to be the way to go. But when I became a registered dietitian, I knew that I wanted that integrative focus as well. So that's what kind of inspired me to pursue a degree in complementary and integrative medicine as well.
Damn.
Very cool.
That's fascinating.
Now, do you focus on like the dietitian world as a whole, or like do you segment interrelationships and sex and kind of focus on that area?
Yeah, so I actually started in clinical practice. So before starting my own business, which was about 4 years ago now, I was in a hospital setting. And even when I first started my business, I actually was still working full time. And at that time I had started my business in the music and entertainment world. So I would, be working all week in the hospital in the clinical setting. And then I would have my, my carry-on with me. And on Friday I would kind of like run out the door and go to the airport. And then I might be in New York meeting a client who's just starting off tour or doing my initial assessment with a client. And then I'd be back in the office Monday morning. And, that was something I couldn't sustain for too long before dropping back to part-time. And then eventually I actually left the clinical world altogether. But when I first did start in the clinical world, which I worked in for about 7 years, I worked in a men's health urology setting. And then, and within that urology setting, there was actually an entire sexual health clinic. So I would see female patients as well, but I would say the primary area of practice was male patients, generally erectile dysfunction, which was usually related to, different underlying conditions that were not being managed well. So things like hypertension, which is high blood pressure, cholesterol, high cholesterol, uncontrolled diabetes, which is, of course, going to affect blood flow. So all those sugar molecules are kind of, when there's too much sugar in the blood, all those sugar molecules are kind of like banging against the artery walls, which then is going to cause small damage to the artery walls, which is why people with uncontrolled diabetes are at an increased risk for different cardiovascular events. So uncontrolled diabetes can therefore also affect blood flow to the erectile tissue, both for men and women, but especially pronounced in males. So, because of course females have erectile tissue as well. It's just, erectile tissue in the clitoris versus in the penis. So blood flow impediments through uncontrolled diabetes, through uncontrolled hypertension or high blood pressure can absolutely affect sexual health as well.
Can you tell me if this is a myth? Because in my early 20s, you go through a lot of things.
Yes.
And I would Google and be like, okay, what's the situation with this?
Yeah.
And they said that cayenne pepper helps with your erection.
Oh, I've never heard that.
That's like one thing that I saw all the time. So if I ever had an issue and I was going to meet a woman that night, I would eat a lot of cayenne pepper. It did nothing for me, but I was
maybe
curious.
it did. Yeah.
That's interesting. It does. It does actually promote circulation. It makes sense. Yeah. So I've never heard that one specifically, but it does promote circulation. I mean, a lot of these like lip plumping not like the injectable treatments, but like the topical like lip glosses that are supposed to make your lips look fuller. The active ingredient is cayenne pepper for the same reason that it's going to like kind of like swell up and increase blood flow.
Yeah,
So I can kind of see
I would
that.
just get like a cayenne pepper, the shaker.
Yeah.
And like if I was going out and I was like, I hope I, succeed tonight with this woman.
Okay.
Just dip it in the water and take a little chug.
They wouldn't kiss you because your mouth was on fire.
Yeah, I was
You
just
had an
going to
erection.
say. I mean, I have to say, you can't really control where that's going to go.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it's just going to affect.
Partially, I knew and was like, this is probably ridiculous, but if it does work, let me just take the chance here.
Yeah, I would actually be curious if like some kind of, I don't recommend this at all, but I would actually be curious if some kind of topical cream would be more effective.
I was gonna say a guy from our high school used to sprinkle it on his
Oh my
penis before
gosh.
dates.
Sprinkle what?
Cayenne pepper.
No, did you?
Like crush it up. Yeah.
No.
No.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay, I was gonna say.
I'm sure someone's tried it. Definitely.
Oh my
But
gosh,
a
you could-
topical. Yeah.
Interesting. I feel like it. Well, first of all, I feel like it would work better, but I don't recommend it because it would have a whole lot of other complications probably.
Yeah.
And also your partner would probably really not like that. Regardless of what gender or anatomical, or what anatomy your partner has, I feel like any orifice that penis went into would be burned, right? Like
You'd have to find like a real spicy Latina woman to take it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, the delicate tissues of all the reproductive organs, I feel like.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
I feel like you just dropped like a whole semester's worth of education on us in like
All
2
right,
minutes.
great,
So I feel like we're
okay.
gonna have so many questions. First of which is it pronounced clitoris officially, or is it
Clitoris?
clitoris? I don't know. I've heard both,
Ooh,
and you
I
said
don't know.
clitoris, and I was like, oh shit.
I did.
Is it clitoris?
Yeah. I don't
Because
know.
it's the clitoral hood,
Yes.
right? Anyway, I just wondered if you had a. I don't even
Oof.
run around town
I
saying
actually don't
clitoris
know.
if it's not.
I don't know. I've always said clitoris.
Okay.
But then
Dolores.
they both
clitoris.
sound right. I feel
Yeah.
like it's just one of those things.
Okay.
I feel like they both work.
All right. We can use we'll use both interchangeably. So I think something, because I'm like pretty into nutrition too, and I
Okay.
think a lot of times like people look for the Band-Aid solution as opposed to getting to the core issue of the problem. So what are some ways, instead of using like cayenne pepper or seriously though, instead of like little Band-Aids and tricks, what are some ways that men can better fix the core issue, like you said, stuff from underlying diabetes or issues like that, to like actually get to the root of the problem?
So first of all, a couple things. I really want to stress again, don't put cayenne pepper on your reproductive organs. I don't want
take
that to
the
be the
blame.
soundbite. I don't want that to be the soundbite from today. So I was going to say, first of all, the underlying conditions. The other thing I do want to mention before I even dive into how to address some of the underlying conditions, which are going to make a bigger difference than the quick fixes, as you've perfectly stated. I want to say that there's also a couple other things that can affect sexual health. And one of them is mental health. So making sure that you're addressing your mental health as well, because there's a lot of ways in which our self-confidence can affect our performance in the bedroom, as well as our just kind of feeling of our overall sexual wellness. And then, so self-confidence, and then your relationship with your partner too, or even if it is a new partner or a casual partner, making sure that you're kind of on the same page about those types of things, because that's, of course, going to affect how you show up in the bedroom. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, too, is even if you are addressing your mental health, sometimes there's medications that can have certain ill effects, side effects, for instance. And that can be ameliorated in some ways by nutrition, but it's also something that should be talked to, that's worth talking to your doctor about. So if you are on a medication that's causing side effects that are inhibiting performance in the bedroom, then it's worth, like for instance, Lexapro, I feel like is one that, it's extremely helpful for many people. But sometimes it can cause, erectile dysfunction, or just sort of, and not necessarily always erectile dysfunction. Well, actually, I don't want to say erectile dysfunction. What I want to say is really some people might not maintain their erection. So it's not that they're it's not that they're having trouble achieving the erection, but they may not maintain it. And it can also interfere with the ability to actually come to orgasm. So that sometimes can be disheartening for many people too. And cardiovascular fitness, having your cardiovascular fitness can really assist with that, but also just, making sure that if that is happening, that it's something that's spoken to the prescribing doctor about.
I could relate to all this actually, and I don't think it's necessarily like, for me personally, when I had say issues, right? It wasn't so much the mental health, but maybe from a broader perspective, it is where say, you know, if I wasn't in a long-term relationship with somebody, right? So you didn't have that comfortability, like you said, right? Which was something that I learned as now married, but also I would get so anxious, right? So like you touched on a lot of things that really hit home with me where I had no issue ever if I was home, you know, like just pleasuring myself. Like it was very easy and nothing was wrong with me, right? That anticipation and the anxiety led to like sometimes nothing happening, right? And I was like, something wrong with me. But I think that mental health aspect of it where it was like, okay, I'm getting too excited, I'm getting too anxious, I'm getting too nervous. And now, you know, nothing's really happening. And I think it went hand in hand with, it was always like a one night stand or like something casual that I really didn't care about. So that lack of communication on the other side, it was like, you know, just things you go through in your 20s that I, you know, learned over time.
Yeah. Another thing that a lot of people in their early sexual experiences, they might not realize, something that a lot of people might not realize is affecting them is, you know, some comments maybe that are made in early sexual experiences or, you know, just kind of like weird and awkward early sexual experiences. So, you know, I feel like a lot of guys especially try and be pretty stoic about, you know, how confident they are in sex. But there's maybe some comments that have been made to them before about like if they ever did have an instance where they couldn't get an erection or couldn't maintain an erection or, you know, again, getting back to like certain medication, side effects of medications that maybe cause them not to be able to reach orgasm. Like some of the comments that their partner might have made about that and which probably came from a place of insecurity of thinking like, oh my gosh, is it me?
Yeah.
Is it like they don't think I'm attractive or I'm not doing this right or I'm not good in bed? And so like some of the comments they made might have been misinterpreted by their partner or might have been hurtful to their partner. And then it can definitely affect how you show up in the bedroom in the future, or even just like the things you're comfortable with in the future or, you know, the things that you want to or don't want to try.
Yeah. And again, I guess this is like a therapy session for me. This is great.
As intended, right? That's what I'm here for.
But yeah, so do you think that porn has an impact on that? Because like, you know, growing up, I had access to a lot of porn, right? So you get this perception of sex that maybe is not real. And then when comments do get made, you might take them way more personal than you should. And I remember, I'll be fully transparent, I was sleeping with somebody and I said something stupid along the lines of like, you know, do you like the size of whatever? And she said, it's all right. And maybe it was a joke, but I was like, shit, maybe I don't have, you know, a big penis, right?
Right.
So I would think that, right? And I was like, shoot, I don't know how comfortable I feel about all this.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously like, now I'm married and like Hannah's like, you know, you're fine. But I did think that way. And maybe half of it was, you know, embellished and maybe I don't know where it was underlying, but I thought that way, you know?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, there's a lot to unpack there.
This is a therapy session for me.
I mean, I feel like, yeah, the comments can definitely have negative downstream effects. Absolutely. There was something else that you mentioned that I wanted to get back to. Oh, porn. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Porn specifically. I feel like on both sides, it can be kind of damaging. And I don't want to just say both sides because, you know, obviously there's more than just the binary female and male, but porn for a long time has been based around, you know, female male interactions. And so I do think, you know, speaking to mostly heterosexual relations, I think that there can be a lot of, first of all, females feel like they aren't living up to what the guys are seeing in porn. And then I think that we're also just kind of at a point right now where a lot of people who are coming of age sexually have discovered most of what they know about sex through porn. And I feel like that's really damaging. So I think that porn can be unhealthy in that way. I think also there's a lot of violent porn. And especially, I want to say like 10, 15 years ago when, you know, I was kind of learning about sex and learning about a lot of it through porn. I think at that time, it was very difficult to find the type of porn that might resonate with you and the type of porn that might actually feel good to watch. And instead it was just like whatever you can find on the internet, which at the time was, you know, kind of the Wild West and still today is, but they're just, you know, I feel like the porn of back then was a lot of like casting couch porn, which I think by nature is like taking advantage of women, and like almost like romanticizing the idea of like taking advantage of women, versus now there's a lot of like female porn that's geared towards females, and I think is a lot more respectful in many ways. And I think just with things like, OnlyFans and, and just and creators, just kind of this like, this upswing in creators, I think that, they have a little bit more autonomy. And they can choose what they want to do and who their partners are, perhaps. And I think that's a lot more empowering. But I will say that still porn as a whole, first of all, it's, maybe not the healthiest for us to be consuming in mass, at least in large quantity. But the other piece of it too is that when you're masturbating, oftentimes it's really about like the end goal. And
Right.
so, and again, I'm not a sexual health specialist. I am in the realm of nutrition and how it can affect sexual wellness and performance. But from the way I understand it, when we're masturbating, especially when there is like kind of the sense of urgency to reach orgasm, it's actually kind of training our bodies to reach orgasm more quickly, which I think for a lot of guys at least might be counterproductive. I think for women, maybe not so much, but for a lot of guys that can be kind of counterproductive. I think a lot of guys are probably trying, for the most part, trying to have, the opposite outcome.
Yeah, that's something I would always read too, right? It's like training for a race, right? So if
Right.
like you're like you said, if you're at home and your end goal is the end goal, and
Right.
you do that in 5 minutes, then that's probably what your capacity is going to be.
Right.
Whereas when you're with a woman, you probably don't want it to be like that. But Steve
So
actually,
I got to cross train, right?
Yeah, exactly.
on one of our first episodes, we talked about Balesa,
Okay.
which I think is a female empowering
Grass-fed,
concept, right?
organic. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
It's
okay.
it's like a female forward, like, I don't know the whole backstory, but essentially they put the performers first and pay them a
interesting.
respectable amount of money. And
I feel like I've heard
yeah,
of this.
you always hear like Balesa vibrators, like probably on podcast ad reads and stuff, but
Okay,
they're pretty big now. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And the porn itself
Okay.
is very different. It's kind of like what you explained, where it's more actual reality from a woman's point of view, and like not more making love, but it's more like
no
intimate.
facials and like
Yeah, and it's not. What
it's
was
not
the word?
casting couch. It's
Yeah.
not,
Right,
I don't
right.
watch a lot of porn personally. And also I grew up in the day with the Sears catalog was my,
Serious
yeah. That was porn in the 90s.
I'm trying to think of like what you're talking about. Like,
You flip through the lingerie section and you get a couple like,
okay,
flesh-colored
yes.
bras to work with. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I was gonna say maybe the Victoria's Secret catalog. Your mom didn't get that.
We didn't get that.
Oh,
I don't
all
want
right.
to
She was too
associate my
smart,
mom
yeah.
and Victoria's Secret either. So.
Yeah, my mom didn't.
But I
either.
actually did have a follow-up question to Joe's. Basically, one of the first points he made about, having trouble maybe getting too anxious in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, as a guy in your 20s, or are you talking about like your 20s probably?
Yeah, like when I first moved to the city in your
Right.
early 20s, and like you're trying to be something you're not, right?
Mm.
And yeah, I would always be like, okay, how do I move this? Because I'm not as comfortable as I would like to be.
right.
But
right.
from like a nutrition standpoint, I'm assuming a lot of alcohol was probably involved, right?
Yeah, and I think I wanted to touch on that too.
That's a great one to touch on.
Yeah, because that's a great point. Living in the city, I was drinking every night, like really not eating healthy. Like I was still working out, but I think the diet was like 80% of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like staying up late, waking up early, and I would assume that had a large role to play in it. And now moving here, and I guess like again, it all goes with maturing and finding someone you actually want to be with. But I'm a lot healthier here, and thankfully everything is now gone
Excellent
well.
profusion to your genitals.
Which is important. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a great point. Like living in the city, it was just this hustle and bustle lifestyle, eating and drinking, and that's probably.
Yeah. I mean, alcohol constricts our blood vessels, so it and impedes blood flow, particularly in excess. So a small amount can actually have the opposite effect, but in excess, not so much. Not to mention it's dehydrating. So hydration is a key important piece of healthy sexual function, healthy blood flow, even being able for women especially to become physically aroused. Hydration has a big piece of that as well. So alcohol can be detrimental in that way. It also desensitizes, which can of course be detrimental. And then, on top of that, alcohol is going to impair your sleep. And then also if you're staying up late, as you mentioned, waking up early, then that means that you're not getting high quality sleep, which is of course going to also drive cortisol levels up. And cortisol is going to negatively affect testosterone, and testosterone, of course, is going to be important for
But yet we need the
achieving
alcohol
and maintaining.
to even get in that position in the first place. At least I did.
Yeah, well, did, yes. Okay, maybe did at the time or felt like you did, but
Yeah.
but that's the thing is we don't actually. And I really kind of I very much enjoy alcohol. It's usually a moderation thing. It's almost always a moderation thing. There's that like once in a blue moon kind of occasion every year or so, I would say. But I definitely practice what I preach in terms of like moderation. But I do enjoy alcohol, and in particular wine. But I have to say, it's one of those things where if you have to be under the influence to want to sleep with somebody, then I don't know.
That's one of the, like we said with health, that's a core thing you need to figure out why that's happening.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Why do you feel that you need to be
Figure out
fucked
the root.
up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I say fucked up on
Yeah.
you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. I mean, if we can say clitoris, then we should hopefully be able to say
anything
fucked up.
goes.
Yeah.
Anything goes.
But,
Yeah.
yeah. Like why, if I need to be like significantly inebriated in order to like this person, then it's probably not the right person to be, even for a casual instance, it's probably not the right person.
Yeah.
Regardless of what your goals are. But I feel like having a clearer mind, and sober dating seems to be trending right now, which I think is very cool. But yeah, having a clearer mind can be really kind of liberating in terms of, sexual and just other dating goals. And actually, I used to be such a fan of like I think my younger self, maybe before I was this successful, it was kind of like, well, not that I'm super successful, but before I was, doing well for myself, I think there was kind of this idea of like, oh, I want to be taken out to a nice dinner on a date, and or like I want to make sure he can at least buy me a couple drinks or something like that. But now I'm like, let's like go on a dog walking date, like let's go on like a coffee date. Like I've become a big fan of the immediate but short first dates. So instead of like all this like time on the apps, like you can go for months on these apps. Just like kind of chatting back and forth, and then like forgetting about each other, and then like coming back and maybe setting a date, and then something changes, especially in LA. It's like all the flakiness. But so I've become a huge fan of like these very short dates, but like that happen pretty quickly after matching with somebody or meeting somebody out. Because it just gives you that opportunity to sort of like weed them out in a short amount of time, and then you can kind of move on.
Or weed them in.
Or weed them in. Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, hopefully soon. Yeah. No, there have been a couple good ones. But yeah, I feel like, just deciding sooner rather than later. And in a short period of time, so that there's not like that added pressure of like going on this longer date, and, the financial pressure almost of going on like some really big extravagant date. Now I feel like not that you ever should feel like you owe anyone anything, but I don't ever want to like feel like, oh, well, like, I feel bad cutting it off because he's taken me on like so many nice extravagant dates or something. Like I'd rather start super low key. Like I said, I've gone on some like first dates where we just like meet with our dogs and like take them to a dog park. That's like my favorite way, because if somebody's good to their dog, then you know that they're probably a good person. But yeah, so short and sweet, which I believe your app is probably a nice segue to talk about that.
Yeah, and I think like it's refreshing to know that like a lot of other people see the dating world going more in that way and feeling more comfortable in that way, right? Like I think a big thing for us is not only to get people in front of each other as soon as possible, but to make it as informal and as least amount of pressure as possible.
Yes.
So yeah, all those things that you just mentioned, I think we're so spot on with what we're trying to do. So that's really cool, especially coming from a woman,
Yeah. Well, and I think also, and the reason I even started talking about this is because, it's a matter of not drinking on that first date too, because I feel like alcohol kind of clouds your judgment. And, you might not see some of the red flags or green flags that you might be looking for. So I feel like alcohol, can kind of, I don't know, muddy the waters a little bit in that way. And just kind of going out for a matcha or a coffee or, like I said, going on a walk is such a better way to just pretty quickly decide.
Yeah. I have a question that is related to all that. So alcohol dates, obviously super popular.
I do those too. Just to be clear, I do those too. I just I really enjoy the the more informal, like coffee type.
Sure.
days.
And no judgment. I think it's great. Actually, I'm going to judge you and think it's great. But in terms of coffee dates, this is a question that's maybe not sexual health related.
Okay.
But I was basically off caffeine for like 2.5 years. Wow. And 2 weeks ago, I started doing like a quarter calf in my, I haven't told you about that. It's a big breakthrough. But what's your take on caffeine? Because for the longest time, like I would get a little anxious and not be able to sleep as well. And then when I stopped after the initial hangover of like a month of headaches and napping all the time, got used to it, started to like life better like that. And then recently I started putting in a little caffeine. And I was telling people, like, for the past couple of months, I've seen all these studies about how caffeine has so many benefits. And I was like, I'm not going to let that sway me because I could easily go back to it. But for whatever reason, over the past like 2 weeks, I just started doing like a little bit of caffeine. What do you think about caffeine in general? And I guess maybe even as it relates to sexual health, but just overall.
Yeah, well, okay, a lot of things actually here. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. First of all, about 20% of the population has a single nucleotide polymorphism, which is just like it's a SNP. So it's just a genetic predisposition to be super sensitive to caffeine, which you might be, just from what I'm hearing. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us in this room, so one of us is probably sensitive to caffeine, right? Oh, 2 of us are maybe?
Well,
okay.
I will say, for the record, that I probably just OD'd on caffeine. I was doing it since I was 25.
Yeah.
8 years worth of 2 to 3 like large cups a day. So I was probably like at some point I just got burnt out.
You could have been in adrenal fatigue, which
Probably,
you need to get off caffeine when you are in adrenal fatigue. So.
And sorry to cut you off. So what are some signs that you could be one of those 20%?
Oh yeah, so the anxiety, jitteriness, those things would of course cause. It would be signs that somebody is in that kind of 20% of people that are slow caffeine metabolizers, and it stays in their system a lot longer. So for instance, if you have a coffee in the morning and it's affecting your sleep at night, then that's usually a sign that that you have that your body is sensitive to caffeine, and that maybe it's something worth avoiding, or at the very least like sticking to decaf. There are a lot of benefits to coffee and to caffeine in general, and to tea as well. Coffee is actually the greatest source of antioxidants in the average American's diet, mostly because our diets are so devoid of fruits and vegetables. Not mine, but the average American. The average American's diet is so low in fruits and veggies, which should be the biggest source of antioxidants, that their primary source of antioxidants is actually caffeine, or coffee rather.
Now, is that bad?
Well, it's not bad that they're getting antioxidants from coffee, but the fact that they aren't getting enough from fruits and veggies for that to be the primary source, that's bad. And I hate the word bad, but because I don't like to say
naughty.
Bad and good. I'll say less healthful,
Okay.
Because naughty almost has a positive connotation to it, and I don't want to do that either. I don't want to give not eating fruits and veggies a positive connotation.
Okay.
How something can be bad. You can call somebody bad, but it's good.
Yeah, a bad girl.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is actually bad, not good, bad.
Okay.
So it's less healthful, we'll say, which is a less sexual and sexy way of describing it. But anyway, so less healthful to be consuming such inadequate fruits and veggies that coffee's the primary source. So coffee is a good source of antioxidants, but if it's your main source, that means you're consuming probably too much coffee and probably not enough fruits and veggies. So what we'd like to see people doing is at least 7 servings combined of fruits and veggies a day, with more of those as veggies than fruit.
7 servings.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like a lot, but if you think about it, what's that?
I need to make up some time here.
I mean, well, think about it though. If you have a cup of berries at breakfast, that's 1. If you have one other piece of fruit, an apple as a snack or something, that's 2. If you have 2 cups of salad at lunch, which most people are probably eating a salad that's even bigger. If you go to Sweetgreen, you're getting 4 servings of veggies right there. So then you're already at 6, and then say dinner has even half a cup of veggies on the side, then that's already 7.
Yeah, most of it comes at dinner.
Most of it comes at dinner, yeah.
For
but
me.
But what does that mean then? Is lunch a sandwich or?
No, I would say I try and have a banana or an apple with my lunch, which is my first meal. My snack is berries.
Okay.
And then dinner is a lot of veggies.
A lot of veggies.
Most of the dinner is 75% veggies, and
that's
then
amazing.
A little bit of protein, and then a little bit of carbs.
So that's amazing. I do have to say, though, I don't like that you're not getting veggies in it all until dinner time. Your first veggie is dinner time?
Yeah. Well, what's an avocado?
That's a fruit. I mean, it's technically a fruit, but really it's I think of it more as a fat, a healthy fat, of course, but It's technically a
What
fruit.
about a tomato?
Also a fruit.
Tomato?
Yeah. Or a tomato,
tomato.
rather. Yeah.
I'm doing good
As
on
your
the
wife
fruits,
would
I
say.
guess, but not on the veggies.
Yeah, the veggies. I mean, not that you need to be drinking celery juice, but even something like a green juice in the morning.
Okay.
Celery juice, there's nothing wrong with it. I just think it's one of those things where people are giving it like way too much credit. I think that what's beneficial about it is that it's mostly water, and that also you are getting greens in the morning. But like I'm a big fan of like a green smoothie in the morning time, or if I'm making eggs, then I'll mix in veggies. So my eggs are like, I'll do like a veggie omelet, and I'll just put tons of veggies in. Or even if I make them poached, I'll do like a side of sautéed veggies with that. I also will even do like a side salad with veggies or with eggs in the morning. So I'm a big fan of like pairing your protein with greens because it helps, the enzymes in the greens help break down the protein properly.
Okay, I need to put more time into my meals. I just
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Where-
What do you
Whatever's
think? My brother's over there laughing because I've been off veggies for about 4 months.
Oh, were you on the caveman thing?
No, I'm on.
I've been getting a lot of questions
I
about that
do
lately.
like, and I don't want to waste too much time talking about this, but I eat carrots are probably the only vegetables I eat now. But and I
Okay,
don't know
no
if that's a root.
greens?
No, I stopped. So I had heard a lot about like defense chemicals in plants,
Okay.
lectins, all these things that are not
yeah.
great for our gut health. And I got to say, after the past 3 or 4 months, I feel way better because I was doing maybe too many veggies, but I was doing like giant salads and stir fries and bell peppers and which I don't know if that's a fruit or vegetable or something else, but
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're a veggie. They're a nightshade, though, so that can be. It's never my first line of defense to cut out any veggies, but if somebody is having certain gut health issues or inflammation, then I might look at reducing nightshades.
okay. Yeah, and again, I don't want to talk about my shit because it'll get boring. But yeah, I haven't had a veggie.
interesting.
He's laughing over there because he knows that I've been off the veggie train for a while.
So, like, is it just like protein and?
It's a lot of ground beef, a lot of eggs, avocados, a lot of fruit, dairy, pretty much the staples.
It sounds a lot like this caveman thing that people are asking me about quite a bit lately. It's like the latest thing people will ask me about. I think it's just meat and fruit.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of Greek yogurt, a lot of kefir.
Okay, so you do have dairy in your diet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's different. I have to say, though, we do know that the cultures that live the longest are these blue zone cultures. They have the lowest incidence of chronic disease, lowest incidence of Alzheimer's and dementia, of heart disease, and they do live the longest. And those are diets that are mostly plant forward and very rich in vegetables primarily. So, everything has to be individualized by the person. But I do strongly recommend a plant-forward Mediterranean type diet. And when it comes to sexual health, we know that that a plant-forward Mediterranean type diet is truly the best one for blood flow, for perfusion. So those are going to be things like your extra virgin olive oil, your leafy greens, at least a serving or 2 a day. Not to mention they're going to have a lot of folic acid, which is great for brain function. Folic acid is also very important for females of reproductive age. So that's a great thing to have in your diet. And not to mention that all greens, and then also beets. So I don't know if you can have beets on your diet. If you can have carrots.
I used to have a lot of beets.
Okay, I was going to say, if you can have carrots, then maybe you can have beets too.
It's
They're
not
very
can or can. I just don't.
Oh, okay. Got it.
I'm not on anything specific. I just
Okay.
got rid of certain things.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think it's great. The only thing I would wonder is, do you think that a lot of European, like I've seen stuff where people say they've gone to Europe for 3 weeks or a month, eaten like crazy and come back leaner because the food quality is so much different.
Oh, 100%.
Do you feel like that in the States, there's so many things that are like poisoning us? Like I know there's a crusade
Yes.
against seed oils right now.
Yes.
There's so many things over here that poison us that maybe like not having vegetables isn't as bad. It's just the other stuff that we're consuming, whether it's through food or the air, or that really
Yes.
fucks us up maybe.
Yes. So first of all, I've had a lot of people tell me when people have asked me about this caveman diet, the few that have told me that they've tried it. So a lot of people are just asking because they heard about it on TikTok. But a lot of other people, or not a lot of other, but a few others who've actually tried it and told me that they felt really good. When I asked them about their diet prior to the caveman diet, it's like all processed food. And so at that point you have to think like, are you feeling better because you're eating whole foods, even though they're primarily just meat and fruit? Or are you feeling better because because it's specifically the meat and the fruit that's making you feel better? Because if you were to just go on a whole food diet that includes fish and veggies and, whole grains and beans, then you might feel just as good, if not better, than you're feeling on the caveman diet. So it's like one of those things where, for instance, like keto, people will tell me, I mean, there's a lot of things going on nutritionally and chemically that happen with keto. But people will tell me like, oh, I feel so much clearer. And the ketones can be a piece of that. But also so often people were really overdoing the carbs before.
Yeah,
and
you don't have
especially the
diabetes
sugar.
anymore. That's why.
Yeah, exactly.
that's why you feel
Exactly.
okay.
Your blood sugar's under control. And there's ways to do that aren't just keto. And there's ways that are going to be healthier for your heart too, long term. Which, by the way, heart health and erectile health are like this one and the same. So when I worked in urology, we used to always say your erections are like a barometer for your cardiovascular health and fitness. So oftentimes these, when guys would come in with, erectile dysfunction, like I said, we kind of talked about this before, but sometimes it was mental health related. Sometimes it was medication side effects, but very often it was, uncontrolled health conditions or just like not being in good cardiovascular health. So especially even like younger guys, I was surprised at how many guys in their 30s and 40s were coming in with issues. And it was very commonly because they, just weren't in good shape. They weren't overweight, but they were just not, they were sitting at a desk all day for the first time in their lives, fit and, very active in high school and even in college. And then post-college getting these jobs where, maybe their body type allows them to eat pretty terribly and allows them to not work out and still look physically attractive to whatever, obviously that's subjective, but to whatever partners they were trying to attract, they felt like they were doing so. And so because of that, and they were functioning fine at work. And so they didn't realize that they actually still needed to take care of their health in terms of their nutrition and their exercise. So it's almost like when genetically you're blessed, you might not eat as healthy as you probably should and maybe not take as good of care of your heart as you should and not exercise as much as you should. And then that's going to affect other systems of your body. Even if physically you might look like somebody who eats well and exercises.
Yeah, I think I fall into that category actually.
Oh,
Because
really?
I had like a finance job and I'd go to the desk at like 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And, in high school, you're an athlete and
Right.
you could eat whatever you want.
Right.
I think that slowly caught up with me to where these issues popped up. But I think like with diet, you do a lot of research and like really dig into it. Then I think the issue with like the TikTok diets, right? Like my brother, who's the guy on TikTok that just eats meat?
Oh,
Like
the one that got in trouble.
raw meat.
The one that got in trouble.
The carnivore diet. But
Yeah.
He does, what's his name?
He's
He like went out of the spotlight because he got.
Oh, did he?
Well,
So-
because he got caught juicing.
Oh, okay. So he's a perfect.
What's his name?
Oh,
What the
wait,
fuck is his
what do
name?
you mean? So
He's
So he-
very famous, but
Liver King.
yeah,
Liver King.
Liver King.
That's the one. Thank you.
So he said that he only ate raw meat, but then like
So
secretly
here's-
he
He was taking steroids. So
Yeah. So and I didn't know
which
that.
everyone would be like, yeah, this guy's obviously taking steroids, but he got caught lying about it, so it came out.
Oh, when you said juicing, I thought you meant like he was like
No,
having
sorry.
a green juice every
Steroids.
morning, and I was.
But I think that I didn't know that, and it helps my point. Where like,
Yeah.
C does a lot of research, right, on all different accounts of like health and look and things that work for his body. And then when it comes to like TikTok, this guy was trending, right? And my brother does not do research, and it was like, I'm going to do this diet because this guy does this and he looks this way.
Yeah.
And he was literally, he bought his own chop meat machine. I don't even know what that is, where he would just buy raw meat and put it in a blender, and then like it was edible in a way.
It's
And
so
I was like-
off-putting to me.
And I said, what are you doing with this diet?
Yeah.
And he showed me
Liver
the
King.
Liver King. He's like, this guy does this, and he was
yeah.
swearing up and down about how amazing this guy was. And to the normal person, clearly he's on steroids, and like even
Right.
if he wasn't, he probably had a team of doctors and like nutritionists to be like, okay, if you want to portray this, make sure you're doing this behind the scenes.
Right.
And people like my brother were just eating meat. That was it, just pure meat. And I was like, clearly this is not good for you.
Right. And it's almost like I have trouble like understanding why somebody would want to do that, unless it's just like because it's so shocking that
think-
it'll get the views.
I think they think they're going to look like that guy.
No.
which is the
I mean, like,
problem.
why the creator? Like, why is he wanting to put this information out
probably, right?
there?
For
I mean,
views
he's
Just like
and-
for
he's
views,
like
yeah.
loaded now. He made so much money.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
so much money.
Wow. Oh, that's unfortunate.
And yeah, he built this whole business brand identity around being the Liver King. So he had to. It's primal living. So he has
Yeah.
like, his whole thing is like living like a caveman essentially, but like to the extreme where it's raw meat and it's
Wow.
raw liver and all this stuff.
But
so.
he went deeper into it on his videos where it was like, this is probably exaggerated, but he said like, so-and-so had cancer and then all they did was eat
Oh,
livers
no.
and raw meat and then the cancer went away. And like people believe it. And it's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah,
pretty
it's like
unbelievable.
that's really tough. It's really tough to hear about stuff like that because as a dietitian and, just a health professional in general, so often people come into your office and they're doing something that they heard about on the internet or on TikTok. And there's so many creators out there that don't see patients or clients on a daily basis. They probably, if they even have any. And so all of their time goes into creating viral content. And because their content is the most viral, because it's their full-time job to create it, then that content gets the most views. And then that's where the average person is getting their information instead of getting it from professionals like myself who maybe don't have all that much time to create content because of the fact that we're seeing our clients all day.
Yeah.
And a lot of doctors in particular, really, I feel for them because people will come in and ask about treatments that don't exist or treatments that are absolutely not appropriate for their condition. Or with me, people, I don't know if this is that big anymore, but there was like an if it fits your macros trend for a while where it was basically just like, well, you can just
Pop-Tarts
eat, Pop-Tarts and donuts all day, but as long as it like fits your macros, but then like you're not getting any actual nutrient-rich foods in your diet because macros are just 3 of the major nutrients you need, but you have all these different micronutrients you need. So people can be, nutritionally deficient despite having the exact amount of protein, carbs, and fat that they need. Not to mention the types of fat, the types of protein, the types of carbs. That's really important too. So these kind of like blanketed like terms or viral trends just like really kill me. And that's this like fruit and meat one is kind of just like the most recent example of that.
Have you heard the new one about women?
The priest and the rabbi?
What's that?
Nothing. Just being dumb.
So Hannah was telling you about this new trend that's going on where women are taking this diabetes pill to lose weight. Or
Are you talking about
yeah.
Ozempic?
what is it?
Yeah.
Ozempic. Yeah. I didn't know it's not just women. Yeah, I actually, one of my male patients was taking it, and he was a longtime patient of mine, and then kind of during COVID, he decided to kind of go off and do his own thing for a while. A lot of patients were kind of, when things switched over to virtual, not everybody wanted to continue virtually, so he was kind of one of those like lost to follow up patients is kind of the word we use for it, and then comes back into my life, years later and is like, came back into my life at one point and, had gained a bunch of weight during COVID. And so we started talking about, a relationship with food and behaviorally what was going on. And I recommended a behavioral psychologist, which I think was immensely helpful for him, but was not like that quick bullet solution. And so then he unfortunately was lost to follow-up again. And this is like somebody who I, truly like love at this point because he's just been a client for so long. And so I'm like, what's going on with this guy? And then he comes back again and he's lost a ton of weight. And then I find out that he's been on Mounjaro, which is...
that's the one.
Yeah, that's very similar.
It's a commercial that plays like over and over.
Oh, really? I don't watch cable anymore, so I don't even know. But Mounjaro and Ozempic are kind of the 2 big ones. Wegovy is actually approved for weight loss. Mounjaro and Ozempic are really more so for diabetes. Wegovy is the one that Elon Musk is has talked about using. But anyway, so he comes back. He's been on Mounjaro and has been having terrible side effects from it, but has lost a ton of weight and now is back because he needs to get off of it because he's so ill from taking it and is just terrified of like the weight gain and the rebound that's inevitably going to happen. So he kind of came back and it's tough to see because it's like, you're happy for him that he achieved the goal that he thought was so important to him, but you're also realizing that he's so unhealthy as a result of doing that, particularly mentally. And that the fear of the weight is like almost worse than it was when he actually had the extra weight on him.
Yeah, which is like a weird goal, right? Like,
yeah.
If your goal is to just lose weight, you could just not eat.
Well, then it's a mental disorder at that point more than anything. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, and so it's been a matter of like relearning the relationship with food. And a lot of people's relationship with food is very much damaged by these medications because it essentially is just, it helps you not think about food anymore and it reduces those cravings. And then it also assists with blood sugar control, which is obviously why it's prescribed a lot in diabetes. But, unfortunately, as soon as you go off of it, the weight gain comes back. And there are a lot of side effects of taking it. And, the thing is, when somebody has severe diabetes, you're weighing the risks and benefits with any medication. And so when you have a semaglutide medication, the risk of having uncontrolled diabetes versus the risk of some of the medications, you and your doctor are kind of weighing that together. And usually you're saying, we want to make sure that our blood sugar is under control, because the risks of having uncontrolled blood sugar, stroke, heart attack. I mean, there's so many, the diabetic coma. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong when diabetes is not well controlled. And so the risks and benefit calculation that's going on oftentimes might say, okay, well, let's try this medication. But when somebody's doing it to lose 10, 20 pounds for like a red carpet event or for swimsuit season, when you're looking at like the risk versus the benefit, like the risks, in my opinion, would significantly outweigh it for just like a casual weight loss purpose.
Yeah.
There are certain conditions, like for instance PCOS, which is oftentimes insulin resistance oftentimes comes with that. And of course, I'm not a doctor. I do want to say that, but
What's PCOS?
PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome. So it's a condition that it's actually, it seems to be, I don't know if it's being overdiagnosed, but diagnoses of PCOS are on the rise, it seems. It's a condition in women where they may have a multitude of different symptoms. One of them is that they have polycystic ovaries. So oftentimes they might even, or not oftentimes, but sometimes they might even need surgeries, to operate on their ovaries. And it can be, risky. And they also might face fertility struggles too. But some of the common symptoms are obesity, particularly abdominal fat, excess abdominal fat, which for women is not necessarily as common as it is for men. Usually women tend to store more excess fat in like their lower body region. Mm. But with PCOS in particular, there's more excess like abdominal fat storage, higher androgen levels, so like kind of male sex hormones, like excess of those, and then that often comes with excess acne, and usually kind of like male pattern hair growth. So like it might even be something like facial hair that's pretty significant, or chest hair. Things like that. So,
is that is visceral fat? Is that the fat that's like around the organs more?
Yes.
Is that similar, or are you just saying on the outer? Because that's more dangerous, right? If you've
both subcutaneous and visceral fat can be in the abdominal region, of course. But yeah, the visceral fat is going to be more dangerous in particular. But with PCOS, that's a great question. Is it more visceral fat versus subcutaneous? I do know there's just more abdominal adiposity, which just means like more fat in the abdomen region. So the weight distribution tends to be one that's going to be less healthful. So we know that when people have more abdominal adiposity, it usually increases their risks of different health complications, and that's typically because of the fact that abdominal adiposity, even if some of it is subcutaneous, oftentimes a lot of it is visceral as well. And basically, what visceral fat means is just fat surrounding the organs, and the fat surrounding the organs is is going to impede blood flow to the organs, and even could potentially serve as like a fuel source for like cancer cells. So I know, for instance, in prostate cancer, that was one of the things that the department that I was working in was studying. Was pretty interested in studying was the presence of visceral fat surrounding the prostate. And could prostate cancer cells feed off of some of that visceral fat? Because it does seem to be that that the higher a man's BMI, the more likely their risk for kind of advanced prostate cancer, or the riskier type of prostate cancer. So, you can have low grade, low volume prostate cancer, or you can have more advanced, more severe or serious prostate cancer that might require surgery or active treatment like radiation, chemo, things like that.
Wow. Let's talk a little more about boners and the hard dick business. Okay, so a couple questions about boners.
Okay.
Number one, is it a good sign to wake up with a nice morning chop?
Yes, actually. And there's a couple of things I want to say about this, but yes, so it is a good sign to wake up with that. It generally is a sign of being healthy, both cardiovascular and sexual health for men. Not always necessarily a sign of sexual arousal, but it's, just kind of like a normal biological thing that can happen. But what I was going to say, we were talking about beets a little bit ago, and I never actually said what I was going to say about beets. Beets as well as greens, both are natural vasodilators because they have, they increase the nitric oxide in our blood. So they act in a very kind of similar, but to a much lesser scale way as like a Viagra or Cialis would.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
That's my next question.
Yeah.
So
great. Well, perfect.
We see all these, I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Okay.
Every single podcast that's geared towards guys now seems to have an ad for like Hims or Blue Chew or what's the other one we said? The hard dick business? Roman. Well, Roman is swipes, and also I think they may have like a pill as well. And Beast is one they sell at a gas station.
Okay.
My buddy Silvio takes Beasts.
What is that one?
I think it's just like a same type of thing where it's like a over the counter erection pill essentially. I don't know if it actually works. I mean, he's got a great sex drive, so it might work.
Okay, so maybe it works, or maybe he already had a great sex drive, and who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I mean,
or maybe there's a placebo effect at play as well.
Possible, yeah. Yeah, he humped my leg a couple times, so God knows. But yeah, so my question is, in your world, in your field, like, is it a problem that these like all these companies are starting to pop up, no pun intended, where like everyone seems to be like advertising these pills and taking these pills? Have you seen much?
That sexual health and sexual wellness is having such a moment because, first of all, it's such an important piece of our overall health. It's something that I think, we're going to see continue to be part of the conversation. When you go into your doctor's office, it's not something hopefully it won't be something that's just going to be kind of dismissed to the side as it used to be. Sexual health is a huge part of our mental, physical well-being. So I think it's a wonderful thing. And naturally, when something becomes trendier to talk about, or, the stigma surrounding talking about it is reduced, then naturally there's going to be businesses that spring up as a result. My biggest qualm is actually a qualm that I have about supplements in general. And I do take them and I do also recommend them to clients. But one issue with supplements is that they aren't regulated by the FDA. And in particular, when it comes to supplements that are marketed towards men, they oftentimes do have pharmaceutical drugs in them, which is illegal. It's been found in a lot of these like over-the-counter geared towards guy supplements that are supposed to promote sexual health. That's a concern. That's a huge concern that there could be pharmaceutical drugs that we're not aware of in there. There could be different quantities of the things that are supposed to be in there than stated on the label.
Especially if it's like a proprietary blend of whatever, and they could.
Yes.
But so is that like illegal, or is it like they can have up to a certain amount? Like,
it's illegal.
So
it's illegal. I don't know how it's getting in there.
Okay.
I mean, obviously it's being put in there. You can't have pharmaceuticals in something that doesn't, that's something that's not regulated and doesn't say it. You can't have pharmaceutical drugs in there. So it's something that I don't understand, like, why this is happening. This is why when I go to Europe, I always buy supplements there. And then when I get back, I, try and make them last as long as I can. But, I do buy supplements here too, but it's very concerning how little regulation is happening in the US. That doesn't mean that some of these brands aren't great.
Sure.
However, it's what's so tricky is that we don't know until enough people have adverse reactions, because adverse reactions, are supposed to be reported to the FDA. And if they're just reporting it to the supplement company, hopefully that supplement company is reporting it back to the FDA, or people can report it to the FDA themselves. But the FDA doesn't really get involved until there's a problem, until there's some adverse events. And then they might start to investigate. But otherwise, they have what they put out, which are called good manufacturing processes, that supplement companies are supposed to follow. But it's not, the FDA is not like checking in to make sure they are. Nobody's regulating it. So that's kind of the concern, is that, there's it's like the Wild West with the supplement world. I think about, like, for instance, turmeric supplements, which can have a lot of health benefits. But there's been I think quite a bit of kidney failure, particularly in young, healthy women taking turmeric supplements. And it's first of all these high doses, but second of all, contamination.
Damn.
Yeah. Not to mention, a lot of supplements too may not contain it. So a lot of supplements may not contain the level of ingredients that they say, but even if they do, you have to also think about the way that it's processed and stored and packaged. So for instance, like omega-3s. Even if they have exactly what they say is inside, that oil could have gone rancid. And then it's actually oxidized and it's doing more damage than it is benefit, because omega-3s are antioxidants. They're anti-inflammatory, but if they themselves have become oxidized, then you're actually introducing more oxidation to your cells, which is actually going to do you more harm than just not taking the pill at all. So I always tell people, if anybody's ever like worried about, the cost of an omega-3, I say, then don't take it, eat your fish.
Yeah.
Or take it every few days or every other day. You're better off taking a high quality supplement that's been third party tested, not just for mercury contamination, but also for purity and quality. You're better off taking it every 3 days, even, once a week, than you are taking something daily that's doing you harm.
Yeah, that's this country is so fucked with that. Like people
Yeah.
just use crazy marketing just to
Yeah.
twist the words around, and people think they're eating something healthy, and it's just complete opposite.
Yeah.
It
And
sucks.
so I will say the FDA does, they do regulate what you can claim on a label.
Ooh,
So you can't claim that a supplement can treat or mitigate disease. But you can say like supports heart health. You can't say like lowers
Right, and
cholesterol.
it's very it's so gray and fuzzy.
Right. Yeah.
I've heard this. People can inject dye into egg yolks to make legally to change the color. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, that's interesting.
So you can take some shitty factory farm eggs and pump some like dark
Yeah.
orange dye and make, oh, they're just so healthy. I don't
Well,
know
what's
if it's
so
true. I've
funny
heard
is that actually I learned not terribly long ago that the color of the yolk doesn't necessarily mean that it's more or less nutritional. I will say that when I see a dark orange yolk, I
I
feel
get wet.
better about
Yeah.
it. Yeah, exactly. It's like a very like, I mean, I buy like either at the farmer's market or like Vital Farms is like my go-to.
Me too.
Big Vital Farms fan. But anyway, so yeah, so I mean, I will say like it tastes different to me when it's like that better quality egg, and I know that there's a significant difference in taste. But the actual color of the yolks apparently is more to do with like the what is it? Like the actual climate, I think, and like the specific
Well, maybe
what's in that grass.
that could be it. That makes sense. But and maybe that's the whole thing is that maybe people think that the dark orange is healthy, and they're taking like the cheap eggs they're injecting, so people think they're healthy. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe it's illegal. Maybe I just read something on the internet that is not true.
I
don't know.
believe that you could inject it with something. However, I don't believe that you could claim that it's organic.
Okay.
But that's a great question. I think wouldn't you have to disclose that in the ingredients?
I mean, you could probably. Oh, I don't know. And maybe it's like, oh, if there's only like X percent.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Interesting.
I do have a question along the lines
Yeah.
of the cayenne question.
Okay.
So I've also heard on the internet
Okay.
that pineapple makes your semen taste better. So I've recently added pineapple juice, but my semen is not tasting any better.
You
At least in my
checking?
opinion. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there any truth to that?
I don't know if there's any science behind that.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any science behind that. I actually think I heard recently that there are some studies that are being done specifically on that. So pineapple is very high in alpha hydroxy acid, as are strawberries. So I wonder if that could in some way, I know it's good for the skin. So I don't know if it would affect the taste. I do know that diet can affect the taste. I don't know if pineapple specifically does though. So for instance, like when somebody's eating a lot of processed foods and a lot of salty foods, or is not properly hydrated, that's going to have a negative impact. And that's, by the way, that's true for men and women, because diet can affect the way that a woman tastes too. And I don't even want to say like men and women, but I guess I'll say like penis havers and vulva owners. But yeah, we know that taste can be influenced by diet. I just don't know if there's anything specific about pineapple or strawberries.
Are
But
we?
go
I
ahead.
just have to interrupt for a second. Are we not penis owners? Or we're just penis havers? Like, what's the difference? Penis
I guess
havers and a
owners.
vulva owner. Are we? Is this borrowed?
Interesting.
I don't know. I'm just.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Is
I don't even
getting
have
really
an answer for it.
philosophical
Yeah,
now.
I don't know. But it's just a question.
Your wife might argue that she's a penis owner.
She's definitely a penis.
She's a
owner.
penis owner. Yeah.
But wait, so more along the lines of like the nutrition and
Yes.
are there foods that actually do create arousal? Like
They create
specifically, like,
arousal, yeah.
Oysters, right? Is that a myth, or do oysters like really turn women on?
So zinc can affect sexual function, and oysters are very high in zinc. However, does it actually create or
Like
improve arousal? I don't think so.
okay,
I think
so
it's
like
a
that
myth.
old cliche of like take a woman to get oysters and it'll really turn her on. That's
Seafood, and particularly shellfish, is high in zinc. And oysters are especially high in zinc. So I will say that it does improve sexual function because you do need that. However, I don't think that there's anything specific to arousal there.
no.
Zinc is important for mood, but again, it's not going to be like an immediate, like you eat zinc and now you're in a good mood,
And
you
that-
know?
and that's-
it's
that's
like if you're deficient in zinc, that'll affect your mood negatively.
And that's any food. So there's not like one food that's
for arousal.
the most turning on
Not
for you?
specifically for arousal. No.
Okay.
I mean, here's where alcohol gets a little bit cloudy, because we do know that particularly in excess, it can be damaging to sexual function and sexual health. I mean, probably everyone's at least heard of the term whiskey dick, right? So it can be damaging to sexual function, sexual wellness, and health in general. However, there is something to be said for the reduced inhibitions that alcohol can provide. I think good conversation can provide that as well. I think like being comfortable in yourself can provide that as well. And also like environment is so key. Like I feel like a good date spot, like a romantic spot, can be arousing. I think those things have a much bigger impact than certain foods, but I do think that food has a big impact on function.
Right.
So, getting back to like greens, beets, those are both vasodilators. Nitric oxide, they're going to, cause the release of nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator. So when we say vasodilator, that means that your blood vessels are expanding, which means better blood flow, better perfusion to erectile tissues. Again, men and women, or vulva owners and penis owners, havers, growers.
Nice.
I don't know. But anyways, regardless of what your erectile tissue is, it's going to have better perfusion and blood flow with things like greens and beets in your diet. Having omega-3 fatty acids, which are anti-inflammatory and, also can promote blood flow and heart health. So we know that that's going to be an important piece. So fish, seafood, fish oil supplements, nuts and seeds like flax seeds, chia, hemp, pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin is great too because it also is high in zinc. So that you kind of get like,
So zinc's
more
a good
bang
thing.
for your buck. Zinc is a good thing,
Okay.
yeah,
That's what I got out of all this.
sexual health. Yeah. Zinc is a good thing for sexual health. And having adequate zinc is also important for reducing risk of prostate cancer, which, is very common in men. So it's something to be aware of there too. Another thing to be aware of as well is the types of things to avoid. So heavily processed food, of course, are going to impede blood flow, are going to be, less healthful for us in general, which, also could affect our hormones negatively. And hormones can then, of course, also affect erectile dysfunction or cause erectile dysfunction if hormones are out of whack. We know that too much salt is going to impede blood flow. So sodium is, vasoconstrictor. Too much caffeine. So getting back to coffee is a great source of antioxidants. Teas as well are a great source of antioxidants. But excess caffeine can constrict the blood vessels as well.
Ooh, I drink a lot of caffeine.
So caffeine, it's one of those things where like I said, 20% of the population is caffeine sensitive. Otherwise, there are benefits to it, of course. And then, not just the caffeine itself, but also the antioxidants that are in the caffeinated thing that you're consuming.
How about this for a loop? I drink a lot of caffeine. Like even before bed, I can go to sleep right after
I
drink
know these
caffeine.
types. Yeah, that's
But
not me.
I wake up with an erection every morning. Riddle me that.
Interesting.
I know people who don't drink any caffeine who wake up with an erection every morning. But
So I don't know if I'm on the good side or the bad side.
caffeine, it's one of those things where certainly if somebody is in adrenal fatigue or has excess cortisol levels, then caffeine needs to be mitigated. Another thing with caffeine that, and I'm guilty of this too, it's something that I'm working on most in my life right now in terms of nutrition, is caffeine on an empty stomach will drive your cortisol up.
So that's good or bad?
Bad.
It's a bad thing. Yeah, that's a bad thing.
okay.
Most people have excess cortisol. I have maybe 2 clients I've ever encountered who have low cortisol. So cortisol is a hormone that, naturally it increases in the morning, which helps us wake up in the morning time. And even the ones that were low cortisol, I feel like it was really more of like a mistiming of cortisol. Like they weren't releasing cortisol in the morning when they were supposed to wake up. But they were releasing it at night when they're not supposed to have it. And that's going to impede their ability to fall asleep and stay asleep.
Can you test for cortisol?
Yeah, there are cortisol tests.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
what is cortisol? Why is it bad?
So cortisol is a stress
Stress.
hormone, which, by the way, it's like your fight or flight hormone. So, by the way, you do need cortisol. I mean, like I said, like it helps you wake up in the morning. Naturally, it ebbs and flows throughout the day, which is why, so many people in the music industry and touring individuals especially tend to have very high or at the very least like mismanaged cortisol levels. Like their cortisol is kind of a roller coaster, but usually it tends to be high compared to what it should be. But yeah, your cortisol, it's very much tied to like your circadian rhythms. So if you don't have a good sleep schedule, or if you're not eating at the same kind of interval times, the same kind of times during the day, and going to sleep and waking up relatively around the same times, then your cortisol levels will probably be affected by that. And that's kind of the recipe for disaster with touring. And just the music industry in general, because it's like a nighttime industry. But I mean, I have DJs that go on stage like 1 a.m. sometimes, and they're playing till 4, and then they're on this like kind of high when they get off stage, whether there's substances involved or not. You're on this kind of like rush, and then you get off stage, and coming down from that is really difficult. And then their crew that then have to load out might not even be done for several hours later, depending on the extent of the production.
That's so fascinating, because every day I drink maybe 3-4 cups of coffee, and then I don't eat until like 2 or 3 sometimes. So I guess that's really bad.
Well, some people have, the ability to do that without having increased anxiety or hormonal or erectile dysfunction
I definitely notice I get very like, my battery runs out right away. Like say like 2 o'clock comes and I'm on my 3rd cup of coffee and I haven't eaten. There's like no wiggle room. It's like I shut down and it's like I need to eat or.
And then do you eat like a really big meal?
Yeah, I eat 2 meals a day, so fairly big, I guess. But I just noticed that with the high amount of coffee and not eating, there gets to the point where I'm just like at my capacity.
Yeah, so that's kind of newer information that's coming out, is how much caffeine on an empty stomach can affect us. It really seems to drive cortisol. So that's something that I'm personally working on, because I notice that I get more anxious on the days that I do that, on the days that I'm like in a rush and I just have my black coffee, which, by the way, that's the other piece of it, is that I love black coffee. So I'm not even getting some fat with it to slow down the rate of caffeine absorption. I think the taste of it is so good. I think if you have really good beans, I have like the whole pour over setup. I dial it into the exact degree on my electric kettle. And, like I'm so particular about that. And so, I mean, I'll drink average coffee too. It just doesn't excite me. But I just, it's such a ritual for me in the morning. I love it so much that I don't want to put anything in it. And then because of that, if you are having it on an empty stomach, then it really can affect your cortisol, and it can, it can drive anxiety. And I notice that on my really high stress, busy days, those are the days where it's easiest to forget breakfast and to just, grab my coffee and go, or grab my coffee and sit down and get started. But those are the days that then I burn out faster and I have trouble sleeping that night. Even if I cut off my caffeine at 2 p.m., I'll still have more trouble sleeping than if I had breakfast and still cut off my caffeine at 2 p.m. It's because you just set your hormones up on this roller coaster for the day.
Yeah. I noticed today I was talking to Michael, and it was like 2 o'clock, and we were in like a really deep conversation, and I was like staring at him, and I was just getting dizzy, and I was like, what is going on? Like I was trying to focus, but I guess I was all
probably
over
your
the
blood
place.
sugar was not happy at that point. Yeah. I mean, caffeine can be a wonderful thing. And getting back to sexual function, I mean, a little bit of caffeine is a performance enhancer. And that's true for sports as well as for sexual performance, which can be athletic depending on what you're doing, right?
Sure.
But yeah, so I mean, caffeine is a performance enhancer. However, in excess, it can be problematic, and it can be a vasoconstrictor. Just how alcohol, I wouldn't call it a performance enhancer at all. I do think it can reduce inhibitions, but very quickly, you can overdo it and experience some of the pitfalls of drinking alcohol when you have a hot date.
Yeah. All right, I got a couple more questions, and then we can kind of go to our little speed round.
Yeah.
So this is not nutrition related, but it's sexual health related.
Okay.
I am a founding member of the No Undies Club. Right.
Okay.
Is there any truth to, or what's the science behind wearing underwear versus not wearing underwear, and also depending on the material?
Oh, you're talking about like for men specifically, like for sperm count and motility kind of thing?
Sure, and women too, and yeah.
Okay, so
do you know much about that?
Well, like, what do you mean specifically? Just like
I know certain fibers are not great to be up against your testes. And,
yes. So a lot of our fibers, the fabrics that we're living in, are like fully synthetic. And I worry about like this athletic wear. So many women,
Yoga
myself
pants.
included, live in yoga pants, and it was at an unprecedented level during the pandemic. And it's like, if you're just putting on your yoga pants, like what's the point of putting on underwear? And and we're realizing that having constant contact with the most sensitive, thinnest skin, really, I mean, other than like armpits maybe, but having contact with the sensitive, thinnest skin and these kind of artificial fibers is, it's really detrimental. And there's, these PFAS, these forever chemicals that we're absorbing through our skin. So it's, I definitely think that, 100% cotton, of course, like organic cotton. It's funny because my mom used to like preach this when we were growing up, and she was right about it, but yeah, 100%. And but that was not like the beautiful fabrics oftentimes, but it's true. So yeah, 100% cotton.
Linen's great too, right?
Linen, yeah, linen is great. I just bought some linen sheets that I'm very excited about.
Me too. I got them like a year ago, but they're the best.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I
Keeps you
just
cool.
washed them. I'm like so ready for this. But yeah, so I have to say like organic cotton, because obviously cotton even can be heavily sprayed too, and then you're absorbing some of those chemicals into your skin. So yeah, it's the fibers, of course, and then for men too, especially if you're wearing something very constricting, then that is going to cause the testicles to be like closer to the body, which means a higher temperature. Higher temperature for extended periods of time is not so good for them. I think it has to do with like sperm count and sperm motility, which may not seem like the biggest deal if you're not trying to get someone pregnant, but can affect overall health as well. Not to mention just temperature regulation in general. But yeah, I have to say, I think that, organic and looser fitting is definitely key. And then, certainly like no undies great, but like, I have to say, I mean, and when I sleep, definitely not. But I have to say, like, are you going to like wash the clothes you're wearing regularly, like your pants, like if you're always going commando, like, and you wear these pants like 10 times without washing them. I mean, I never wash my jeans, so I always wear underwear with them.
I wouldn't be able to.
Jeans I still wear underwear with, just because of the zipper. I'm scared of the zipper.
Yeah. That's
a
risky.
rough texture.
I wouldn't mind.
Close to the family.
So I try to limit it when I can.
That's
the
the nice thing about skirts and dresses.
Yeah.
Just let everything breathe.
That's true. I have one more question. I don't know if you do it before the speed round. So to bring it back to dating, let's say someone was going to take a date to a concert, and you're in the music world. What are the top 2 or 3 live shows that people have to see? Top 2 or 3 artists that you think are amazing?
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's a great question. Whoa. Okay. I would say somebody from your parents' generation. The reason I'm not giving a specific name is because mine was Bowie, and I know that that's not an option anymore. But somebody from your parents' generation, from that like classic rock generation. First of all, because like they're truly some of like the music legends of the world. But secondly, because it's nice to like have that to relate to your parents with. Like for my dad, he had seen, I think he was the one who truly introduced me to music and like kind of helped me cultivate what I consider to be a pretty worldly taste in music. And the one artist, he had seen everybody, I feel like, of his time, but the one artist he had never seen was Bowie. And so I took him to see Bowie when I was like 14 or 15. It was like that last tour that Bowie did. And it was just such an incredible bonding experience. So I'm not saying you have to go with your parent, but like someone from your parents' generation. Gosh, this is really tough. I have to say Phoebe Bridgers. I toured with her, so I'm a little biased and a little spoiled from getting to see her play every night. But I have to say, like, first of all, if you can bond over sad girl music, then this could be your person, But also you have to just appreciate musically just how incredibly talented she and her entire band are. Who else would I say? Who else have I seen lately that's been amazing? I'm trying to think like who has been the most recent artist that I've seen. Other good ones, I'm a huge fan of like indie rock for a date because I feel like electronic, you can't really hear each other. One artist that I'm really dying to see right now is Sophia Cortezes. She is electronic. She's a DJ, but she's outstanding. She never comes to the U.S. and she actually did recently come to the U.S. and I had a sprained ankle, so I couldn't go.
Lisa Turtle would have been there.
What's that?
Lisa Turtle would have been there.
Who's Lisa Turtle?
From Saved by the Bell.
Oh.
She won a dance contest with a sprained ankle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was like a deep cut.
Anyway, Well, we can move on to the speed round.
Gosh.
If
Okay.
you,
No, I
if
want
you
to.
happen to think
Now
of,
I like need to think about this. But yeah, at least one person from your parents' generation, at least one indie, and then I have to say, yeah, God, there's so many artists that I want to see right now. Big fan of electronic, but I wouldn't go there for a first date. I would say indie for a first date because it gives you something to like kind of bond over, and the music
Trauma
tends
bonding,
to be
yeah.
trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
okay, this is our speed round, and we're gonna have it presented by Erwan here.
Okay. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Erwan. All right, so this speed round. I mean, sometimes we drag out the answers, but you can hopefully answer them. You know, whatever comes to mind first.
I was gonna say I really struggled with the music question, and that's like right up my alley.
Well, now
so
you have
I don't know.
gun
We'll
to your
see.
head. So, what is the best thing that happened to you today?
Ooh, this podcast has been great.
50
Is that
in a
what
row.
everybody always says? Let me change it.
Yeah.
And that's also what everybody says.
Oh, okay, great.
So we'd
Wow.
love to hear the
So,
second one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
all
start
right.
asking what the second best thing is, so we
Yeah.
can just save time.
Okay, second best thing that happened to me today was my dog. The way that he looks at me every time I come home, even though I only like went home for like 2 seconds because I had to change my shirt. I had a rip in my shirt that I noticed when I was on my way here, so I like went home, changed my shirt very quickly, and the way that he looks at me when I come home is like, even though it's pretty much the same every time, it's still like the best ever. And he like goes and gets a toy and brings it to me and just like wags, like looks up at me with the most loving eyes. So that's probably the second best thing.
That's great. What's his name?
Luca.
And what kind of
Luca.
dog is he?
He's a retriever mix. He just looks like
Oh,
a
nice.
cream-colored golden retriever, but
Very
he's
All
he's a
American.
mix. Yeah, he's a sweetie.
What is the best compliment you've ever received?
Ooh, women love being complimented on their eyebrows. So great eyebrows would have to be one of them. I've had somebody tell me before that I just like ooze sexual energy, which I found to be very hot because it was somebody that I was attracted to. Obviously, if that came from somebody who I wasn't attracted to, I would have been really creeped out.
We were just talking about that on the last episode. Right?
Really?
Yeah, like, well, the idea of like if someone's like really attractive, or if you're into somebody, they can basically say anything to you, and you're like,
Yes, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
my God,
yeah.
so hot. I actually met a guy IRL this weekend, and it just like he's like, I think he said the way that I said really was like he was like, can you just say that again?
Can you say it?
Really? Like, or like the way I was talking to him though, like I guess because he like said something, and I was like, oh really? And he was like,
I see. I felt a little difference in that one.
okay, so
Yeah.
like that's the way I was like, oh
Maybe
really?
it's oh really,
really?
not just really.
Maybe.
Try oh really.
Oh really?
Yeah, it has a little more like poetic
Yeah.
flow to it.
He like asked me to repeat it multiple times, and I was like, "This is the best line I've ever heard."
Okay. What's your favorite date spot in LA?
I actually really like Melanie Wine Bar just down. Well, it's not really just down the street, but it's on 3rd in like kind of Beverly Hills area. I feel like it's kind of right at the border, but it's like right by the Grove. Melanie Wine Bar. It's super cute because it's just like kind of hole in the wall little wine bar. The bartenders are all very knowledgeable, and I can't go there anymore for first dates because I've taken. Not taken, but like been on several first dates there, and I just like don't want the bartenders to like.
John Tucker Must Die. That's you bringing the
I-
same date.
So
or
I just
bringing
like
this-
can't. Yeah, I can't go there anymore. Oh, I also love. Speaking of wine bars, another spot in Beverly Hills. I live in Beverly Hills, so I have to find the local spots. But Sur Le Verre is great, and it was started by the same people that started Tabula Rosa in Silver Lake, which is another awesome wine spot. So I'm anywhere that's a wine bar, basically. Favorite is one of my favorite first date spots. But I also am a huge fan of just like picking up a coffee and meeting somewhere. Whether it's outside, going on a walk. I went on a great date where we just like met at Alfred, picked up matchas, and just like went on a walk. And I really enjoyed that. But yeah, lots, big fan of wine bars. I actually am getting my level 2 wine certificate right now. So any opportunity to get to like learn more about wine, try something new. But yeah, Sur Le Verre and Melanie Wine Bar, which it's funny because I don't think of like Beverly Hills as being like the most hip area. But so I really try and like find like the cool little spots there. And I feel like those are some of the best ones right now.
Cool. Favorite romantic comedy?
I don't really like romantic comedies. That's a tough one. Oh God, it's Spitfire though. So I guess Love Actually. It's
Okay.
like a Christmas movie too.
Okay. Movie that made you cry?
All of them. I mean, yeah. I mean, lots of movies make Love Actually again. Yeah.
You can't use that one.
Okay. Why can't I think of any movies right now? I mean, I watch movies. A lot of movies make me cry. I don't know.
Maybe the last one that made you cry?
The last movie that made me cry. I cried during an episode of The Kardashians recently.
We've never heard that before. Wow.
I don't really watch reality TV, but like somehow that one has snuck back in. God, what was a movie that made me cry recently?
A Man Called Otto.
I haven't seen that one yet. The Whale.
Mm.
Oh God, yeah.
I think did someone else say that? Someone else might have said that
Yeah.
Well,
recently.
it's a tearjerker.
Go-to karaoke song.
Ooh, Zombies by the Cranberries.
Whoa, that's moody. That's some moody shit.
Yeah, best when like in the company of friends. But yeah.
Okay, 2 more. What would you give? What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Ooh. That's a great one. I would say not to overthink it, which I would say to my current self too.
Okay, that's good advice. Last one. What does love mean to you?
Ooh, that's a great one too. Respect, I think, a mutual respect and understanding and care for one another. I think that like the spark is very important, but I think that it's like what you also then do, like the desire to continue to build that spark and to continue to keep that spark alive. And yeah, respect, I think, is a big piece of it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, Joe.
Oh, yeah. If you could have one law in the world
Okay.
that everybody had to follow,
Ooh.
be as crazy as you want it to be, what law would
Okay.
it be and why?
Honesty, because like, especially since I've been in LA, it's like very unusual to me for people to not just be honest. I think there definitely is like a contingency of people, and I've tended to gravitate so far. I've tended to gravitate towards people that like are very like open and honest. However, I also, especially in the dating world, it's very strange to me how many people here just like lie about what they do or like where they live or just like things that would seem like, very unusual things to lie about because it's all like information that can be verified. But like in Chicago, where I moved from, people pretty much like tell you like it is, like tell it like it is. And New York as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, same in New York.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And
Like that's been kind of shocking for me.
Yeah, I said the same thing when I first moved here.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, when I first got here, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like everybody does all this cool stuff. And then, over 2 years, I was like, okay, a lot of them are bullshitting.
Yeah.
And now, similar to yourself, I'm doing a better job of like finding the good people here because there are a lot of good people here.
Yeah. Oh, there are. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a big contingent of people that fabricate the smallest things. And
Really
it's like,
bizarre.
why would you fabricate something like that?
Really bizarre. And I feel like that's kind of because of that. I've sort of been like attracted more towards like, no, I don't just mean like sexually attracted. I mean like just like the types of people I'm seeking out are people that are not necessarily from LA.
Mm-hmm.
Which by the way, I've actually met some wonderful people, and I came out here already knowing wonderful people from LA too. But I feel like, I don't know, like I've been really enjoying finding like my Midwestern kinfolk. But yeah, I have to say like honesty would probably be it.
What happens if you are not honest? Is it death penalty or is it something on jail time?
No, it's just like it's
For
just
the law. For the law.
Oh, for the
Yeah, when
law.
you're writing
Oh,
this
yeah,
law.
yeah. I thought you meant like right now, and I'm like, it's just like really disheartening. Ooh, yeah. You have to like write your biggest secret on your forehead and walk around like that. That's the
Whoa.
penalty. Yeah,
Damn. Okay.
yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
All right.
Anyways, I was going to say, what I was going to say is my biggest thing that's been helpful for me since moving to LA in terms of like expanding my friendships, because, I've wanted to make new friends as well since coming here. And at first, I think I was just sort of like surrounding myself with people just to like surround myself with people, or like going out just to go out. And particularly in music, like you want to go network, and, being out is a big part of work. However, I have made a new rule for myself, which is, and this is probably in the last few months, which is I don't spend time, or I don't invest in people that I wouldn't be friends with outside of being new to the city. So I don't want to just, if I wouldn't be friends with them in Chicago, where I don't need any new friends because I have a lot, then I don't want to be friends with them at all. So I don't
that.
want to just surround myself with people just to surround myself with people. I want to make sure that the people I'm surrounding myself with are people that are of high quality, that would be there for me. Otherwise, I would rather stay home with Luca. I mean,
I agree.
he loves when I stay home. So, otherwise, and so because of that, sometimes I'm probably spending more nights in than out, but that's actually been really nice too.
Yeah. And plus you tour a lot, right? So it's probably nice to be able to just chill at home.
No, actually, I don't tour that much. I work with a lot of clients who go on tour.
Oh,
but
so you don't actually go with
I don't
them?
usually go out on the road with them.
Got
I'll
it.
usually go out for like the first couple days and do my initial assessment, get things set up for them. And then most of what I do is from afar. And the biggest reason for me to move to LA was to be able to do all this pre-tour work with them as well. So I'll work with clients a lot before they go on the road and when they get back from being on the road. And that way, when they're out on the road, it's just kind of maintaining their health. So what I realized in several years of working with touring artists is that trying to get healthy on tour is like unrealistic, basically. That's like saying, I'm going to try and like start my diet on vacation. I mean, to be fair, you do have more time on vacation, but it's probably very difficult to start a diet when all you want to do is relax and enjoy and, drink and go out and celebrate and whatever it might be. So yeah, it's trying to start a healthy eating regimen on tour, I find is very challenging. And it's something that I've helped a lot of clients navigate. But my reason for moving here was to be able to work with them prior to tour. And that's actually been very meaningful to me because I find that the outcomes are much better when people are actually taking care of themselves before they go on the road. They feel better already leading into tour. They don't dread going on tour. And usually their outcomes when they get back, they don't have as much of that like kind of post-tour slump because it's a matter of getting back into those same healthy routines they were in. So they have something that feels familiar to come back to. So actually I don't go out on tour really with clients much. I have. And in particular, like during COVID, there was kind of like this one-off situation where I did go out for 6 weeks at a time. But yeah, it's usually not. It's usually something that I do like ahead of them going on the road, or work with them while they're on the road virtually. And like there's been times where I've like gone out for a couple days during tour. Things are not necessarily going according to plan, so I'm kind of going out and meeting with them and
Cool.
helping
That
them
makes
along
sense.
that way. But yeah.
All right. One more thing, because I think it's another one of the 1,000 practical tips you've gave. Maybe it's a good takeaway.
Are there good takeaways?
Oh,
Good.
really?
Because
So
I feel like
many.
I get lost in the weeds a lot. And I'm like, all right, did we dial the message in?
No, definitely. But I think for the average person listening, like one thing you said on a different podcast was that you like to add in things before you take things out of like someone's. I think
Yes.
that's a
Oh, you
really
listen,
really helpful tip because
Yes.
trying to just eliminate stuff like cold turkey is tough.
Yes. It makes a huge difference. So adding to somebody's diet, and that's, that's the case whether somebody's on tour or whether they're at home. I always like to try and incorporate things that are healthy into their life and into their diet before we talk about things to try and reduce or get rid of. So for instance, especially when it comes to drinking, I have a lot of people that come into my office and they say, well, whatever you say, I'm not going to stop my drinking, or I'm not going to stop my diet soda, or I'm not going to, like, they'll come in and the first thing they say to me, the first thing out of their mouth is like, and this is not common, but it definitely happens where like, you can tell that people are coming like a little bit guarded and like there's like a bit of a wall up, and that's kind of how they're presenting is like, whatever you do, you're not taking away my one thing. And that's kind of what led me to start to think about nutrition in this way of like, instead of focusing on all the things I need to get rid of, because when I was a student, I used to, when I was, apprenticing under dietitians and, they would have me like practice with that, with the client, and they would kind of oversee it. And then they would say like, okay, here's what you could have done differently. So you have a lot of like, just like with doctors and training, there's a lot of training you have to go through and, oversight from a professional. So anyways, I would say like, oh, we have so much we need to change. They would say, okay, what are your top goals for this patient? And I would say like, there's like 20 things that I want them to change. I said, if you tell them to change 20 things, they're going to change zero and they're never going to come back. And I found out the hard way that was true. And if you have somebody change 3 things, and especially if they're things that are adding to their life, like adding more veggies to their plate rather than, taking away their steak, or taking away their soda. If you're just adding, small but meaningful things, usually they start to feel better, and then they want to make some of the bigger changes too, like getting rid of the soda or cutting back on the alcohol or something like that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, where can people either follow you or find more information? I know you wrote a book too, right? I don't know how recent that was.
I wrote a chapter in the Touring and Mental Health Music Industry Manual that just came out in March. So
Congrats.
it's thank you. Yeah, it was a huge deal for me. So I wrote the nutrition chapter, but there's so many incredible music industry experts that are in that book that wrote all the different chapters, everything from sleep addiction, sex addiction, porn addiction, substance abuse, and then, everything you can possibly think of that could affect a touring musician or crew member or professional who's, constantly on the road. So I wrote the nutrition chapter for that. So if you are in the music or entertainment space, then definitely check that out. Otherwise, I can be found at soundnutrition.co on Instagram. I technically have a TikTok, but I don't know if there's anything on there. So definitely Instagram for now. And then, of course, my website, which is also soundnutrition.co.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Emmaline, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
Thanks,
having
Emily.
me.
Appreciate you.
All right.
Second
and
round's on me, by the way.
thanks so much for watching. Check out one of our past episodes.